Okay, first of all, I just want to thank the players and our coaches for an amazing season. Very, very gratifying for my first year to be a part of that. Very special. And I want to thank you guys for all coming out here today. We have started the scouting process. We've started looking at free agency, and we're meeting and talking about these guys. George Kokinis and Joe Ortiz have done a great job getting the free agency boards lined up. And the draft process has started as well. And we'll be out here this week looking at these guys. We spent the last month or so at the All-Star games, at the Senior Bowl, East, West, and the other games. We've had our first set of meetings in February, early February, where we talked about the players in the draft, and we've got a draft board close to 200 players this year, which looks really good. So we're excited about that and very, very excited to help this team get to the next step. I should also say that Coach Harbaugh misses you guys, and he's back in Baltimore grinding on tape. He's recovering. He calls me every day. We've had some good conversations. He's watched a lot of guys, and I'm excited to visit with him when we get back in town. So I'll take your questions.
What did you see this year? What did you see this year out of Miles before you get into a guy that can take the next step?
Very, very excited about Miles. He made some big plays for us throughout the course of the year. We expect him to improve quite a bit with an off season. He's a big and strong and fast, physical guy, great attitude. The second year for most receivers is critical, and we think he'll make a big jump. Love Mark. Big trust. I mean, I think Mark is a guy that brought tremendous credibility to the locker room. His attitude, his work ethic, second to none. A physical guy, a great downhill runner, a great fit for our scheme. I think Matt Weiss, our running backs coach, did an awesome job last year at this time identifying Mark as a guy that would really fit the team. And he's done that even more than we could have possibly imagined. I think that will continue. Well, we replaced him pretty well this year. I think we had some guys that came in and played really well this year. I think Chuck Clark did a great job. Tony obviously going down was tough for us, but Chuck came in. Deshaun Elliott. I mean, obviously Earl Thomas playing for us. So Eric's a guy that, I think we had tremendous respect for. We wish him the best in retirement, and I'm excited to see what his next step's going to be. I have not. We saw Marshall. I had a great conversation with Marshall at the Pro Bowl. We didn't talk about the future. I'm sure we'll have those discussions at some point, probably in the next month or so. I think it's strong. As we look at the board, we see a bunch of guys this year that will probably be first and second round picks. There's a lot of volume at the position, some really talented guys. Obviously the guys at the top, but also as you look at the second and third rounds, you'll see some guys that have the chance to come in and impact teams very quickly. That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. We've seen historically receivers have struggled a little bit with the learning curve up to the NFL. But in the last, 3, 4, 5 years, we've seen a lot of guys make immediate, especially last year. If you really look at the class, you'll see a bunch of guys coming right away and make big plays. And we were fortunate last year with Marquise, and even Miles, to a degree, made plays for us. So we're excited about those two guys. And we really do see this year's draft class as an opportunity for us to even improve at the position even more. Well, it was fun. We haven't historically been known as an offensive team. We talked about it. We've thought a lot about it. We tried to build the offense this past year. I think Greg Roman and the offensive coaches and John, they did an awesome job communicating to the scouts and our scouting staff and myself the types of guys that they were looking for. And we had a really clear picture, I think, of where we wanted to be as an offense. And obviously Lamar was a big part of that. But the offensive line, the running backs, the receivers having to learn how to really block, and then our tight ends, probably one of the strongest position groups to the entire NFL. Those guys really just gelled at the right time. And it was just, I think, from an employee perspective, unprecedented and fun. I mean, every week, just seeing what we were able to do and how we would adjust week to week, and just we started so many games, I think, this year scoring a touchdown, and that was incredible. I mean, every single week, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of.
What's the level of interest players on the market out there? How has that shifted wanting to play in this offense?
Well, I haven't had any discussions with players on other teams yet. We'll do that as the league year gets started. But I can tell you, like, our players love being a part of it. I had some concerns, specifically with our receivers, where their volume of catches would be down a little bit. But having talked to those guys, they're just as amazed by Lamar and by the offense as anybody else, and they love playing for the offense. So, listen, players want to win. Players want to succeed. They want to be put in position to succeed. And we were able to do that this year very effectively, and it was a lot of fun to be a part of. Well, I think that we're trying to win, and there's a lot of different ways to win a game or a season, be successful. And so, like this year, for instance, we knew we had to make some moves on defense. And there was at one point in the season, Coach Harbaugh and I were meeting, and we were talking about what we had to do, and we felt like we had to do something, whether that was find a pass rusher, whether that was find an elite corner, but we had to do something. And so the opportunity really came about where we could get Marcus Peters. That doesn't mean we wouldn't have gone after a pass rusher. I think we think this. If our offense continues to play at the level they've played at this past year, we will probably be ahead in some games, and we're going to want to have a strong pass rush. I think on defense, if you look at great defenses, historically, 3 things: can rush the passer, can cover, and can stop the run. We really do believe all 3 of those things are very important. We're trying to build a defense that can do all 3 of those things. It's tough with the confines of a salary cap and trying to keep as many good players as you can in offense. So it is a little bit of a puzzle, but we will continue to try to do that. We believe in that. We've been a part of some really good defenses over the last 24 years. We think those are the main components. Well, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I think we want to have really good players at all those positions. I'd love to have some elite pass rushers. I'd love to have some elite corners. I think Wink Martindale does an unbelievable job of taking players, finding out what they can do, put them in position to succeed, and they did that this year. I thought what we were able to do on defense under Wink's guidance with our coaches and our players, bringing in all those guys that we did, I thought that was masterful. It's kind of the same thing, I think, Jonas. We want to have really good players at all the spots. And so, fortunately with Lamar, he's a guy that can avoid, tacklers. He's pretty evasive in the pocket. So he can do some magical things. But we also want to keep him protected. And we also want to put skilled players around him so that defenses can't just focus on Lamar, and we can keep the field kind of balanced. So, the challenge is really to keep, we tried to keep, looking at our offense this year, we tried to keep as many players under contract or get as many players under contract as we could. And I'm excited that on the offensive side, we pretty much have the whole offense coming back intact for the most part at this time. Now, there's some questions. We're not sure what Marshall's going to do. But we feel really good about where we are. Now, we want to add to that. We want to continue to keep a strong offensive line. We want to have the best offensive line we can have. But we also want to add playmakers around Lamar. We started doing that last year with Justice and with Miles and with Hollywood and guys like that. That'll continue. We feel strongly about that, and we're excited about where the offense can go.
Speaking of Justice, is there room for him to take a step forward next year and maybe get his touchdown?
Well, he did this year. We saw him take a step, I think, over the last quarter of the season. He started making plays. Over the last few games, he was an impact guy for us on third downs. Now, unfortunately for him, but really fortunate for us, we've got some really good running backs with Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards as well. So we've got a good stable there of guys who can play. We've got a lot of confidence in all 3 of those guys, and we feel like we're covered for the next couple of years. Now, if there's a chance to draft an elite guy this year, maybe we do that. Remains to be seen how the board stacks up, but we like our group of running backs for sure. Well, we're really excited about him. Number one, he's got a great work ethic. He's explosive. I think you all saw his hands, his ability to catch the ball in traffic and make contested catches for a little guy. He's got a great attitude. We're excited to see what this offseason is going to be. I think coming off the injury that he had, which was a significant injury, to see how he rebounded week to week and played in the games and made big plays all throughout the year, that was exciting. We're excited about that. Receivers typically make a big jump from their first to second season. We think that's going to happen with Hollywood. And I think also just working with Lamar in the offseason, working with Willie in the offseason, the timing and all those different things that are critical to that passing game, that's going to be a big deal for him. Andy's very thorough, intelligent. He speaks with conviction. He's an aggressive guy. He's a good leader. I think he knows a lot of different ways of scouting. He was with New Orleans. He was with us. I like to think we trained him in a lot of different ways. He, when I think of Andy, he's probably one of the most thorough guys we've ever had in terms of getting information on players and generating background information. His brother, Kevin, works for us now as well, and he's very much in the same vein. So I love Andy. That was a big loss for us at the time, and we wish him well. Well, as you all know, our former GM, Ozzie Newsome, was a tight end, and we've always placed a premium on the position throughout our time there. And people were surprised, I think, when we drafted Hayden and then drafted Mark Andrews, but we did that once before when we drafted 2 tight ends. And so we've always thought that was an important position. And then with our offense, with Greg Roman, he's always been a coach that liked a lot of multiple looks, and I think tight ends really do factor into that. So for us, we had high grades on Hayden and also on Mark. Hayden we thought was going to be a really good player, but when Mark was there in the 3rd round, it made too much sense for us to not take him. And then we took Nick Boyle a couple of years ago, and we think he's one of the best blockers in the league at the position and really a glue guy for our offense. And the final component of that was Pat Ricard, who was a defensive lineman out of Maine, who we converted to a defensive line / tight end / fullback. And he's another guy that's been a little bit of a revelation for us. We got him signed to a long-term deal this year, Pro Bowler for us this year. And he's another guy that really fits the offense that we're using. And I think Greg Roman has done a great job of taking all those pieces and making us a very innovative, unique offense. Well, I think that actually goes all the way back to a guy like Rex Ryan, who I think we all learned from when he was defensive coordinator. Just with the idea of having players that were interchangeable and were versatile players who could do a lot of different things. And so I think Wink is very much the same type of coach. He loves players who can do different things, who can you can use to disguise the defense, who can be used in different situations in lieu of injuries and things like that. You can play guys at different spots. So when we evaluate players, we're always trying to find out how much they can do. Can they play inside the box? Can they play on the edge? Can they drop? Can they rush the passer? Are they smart players? Can they learn multiple positions? Corners, can corners play safety? Can safeties play corner? All those types of things really do factor into the evaluation process. They help you build a roster, number one, but on game day they also help you to create different looks that confuse the offense, and that's a big part of what we do. I have no idea. How many people are right-handed here in this crowd? Probably a lot of you guys. So, I mean, I really don't know the answer to that. I think he'll do great. He's talented. He's smart. He's highly competitive. He's played in a great scheme. He's got great intangibles. So the injury was a tough thing. I think by all accounts he's overcome it. This should be a big week for him. But I think he's got the right stuff, and someone's going to get a great quarterback. Well, the idea is always to have guys in each round that you think value-wise will be there. And we see that. I mean, we see some guys go in the first round, and we're picking later in the first, so we may be holding our breath on some of these guys. But the challenge for us will be to find the right guy at the right spot of the draft. And we think it's a good year. We're always looking at these defensive ends, undersized defensive ends in college, 4-3 defensive ends that we can convert to outside linebacker. We see those type of guys. But we're also looking at some guys that we can play at 5 technique who can rush the passer as well. And then you're also looking at the 3-4, the 3 technique, the disruptive guys who can rush as a defensive tackle. So we're trying to find guys that can get after the quarterback. I think positionally we're not as caught up at that as in terms of the actual skill set of being able to rush the passer and create some pressure and some havoc.
This is an obvious question, but how does it affect your job and affect the franchise when last offseason you had a rookie quarterback who looked pretty good but was young, and now this offseason your quarterback is the MVP? What does that do just for how you view everything when that happens?
Well, it helps from the standpoint of we've got a young quarterback who's we think is really good. He's not making a ton of money right now. He's not making a lot of money. It gives us the chance to keep the roster together. We've tried to do some deals to be proactive, to keep players on the roster while we can. And it also really gives us a clear picture of what we're going to look like next year and how we can improve. It starts with Lamar. It starts with his offseason, working with his teammates, working with our coaches, working on his weaknesses and things like that. But it also helps us to look at the roster and how can we get better. Where do we think our biggest chances to improve as a team would be? What positions? Where do we allocate our resources? How do we build around him? What do we think our offense is going to do for our defense? And how do we think offenses are going to be forced to play against our defense because we think our offense is pretty good? So last year at this time we had some unanswered questions. Now this year we don't think we have any unanswered questions, but we know we do. We have to figure out what those unanswered questions are. Standing here next year, I'll have a different opinion than I have this year, which I had obviously a different opinion this year than I had last year. We know some things are going to pop up, but we feel pretty good where we are right now.
2 more questions.
I really don't have an opinion on that. I'm excited to see what the CBA looks like. Hopefully that gets done pretty quickly. But, we'll look at the CBA. We'll see what's in it. We'll react accordingly based on all the changes that they make. But I don't have much of an opinion on the marijuana usage.
Last one.
We're hoping that it's come along a little bit slower than we first thought. Not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, it's always been, in my opinion, one of the most competitive divisions. And to see the young influx of talent at the quarterback position, I mean, Baker Mayfield is a tremendous talent. Lamar, we feel really good about him. I mean, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks we've seen in a long time. And then, I mean, Ben's a Hall of Famer, so it just makes our division really fun. Every game is a dogfight. There are no easy games in the AFC North. We respect those guys very, very much, and we can't wait to get started.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Thank you, guys.